Hello, good evening. Welcome to our regular trustee meeting for the Beavercreek Township. It is Monday, March 27th. It is 5:02 p.m. If you would all stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, we have an agenda. Are there any changes or corrections?
No, do I.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the agenda for the March 27th, 2023 meeting as presented.
Second.
And also a motion to excuse Ms. Wallace.
Yep. And I'll modify that to extend, to excuse Ms. Wallace from today's meeting.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept the general ledger report in the amount of $353,760.75 for the March 22nd, 2023 payroll as presented.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept the payment listing reports in the amount of $706,145.29 for warrants through March 23rd, 2023 as presented.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from the March 13th, 2023 regular trustee meeting and the March 6th, 2023 special trustee meeting as presented.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes. All right. We have a pre-scheduled speaker.
Thank you, Board. Wanted to present Sarah Kelly from Planning Next. She's going to provide us an update to the comprehensive land use plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having me here this evening. I will not take a lot of your time, but I'm really excited to share with you some of the progress we've made on the community plan. And give you a little preview of what might be coming up in the next couple of months as we work towards completing a draft of the plan document and getting that to you for your review and hopefully approval by May. So I will just go through. There's just a few things on my agenda that I want to go through. Wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of our process and let you know where we are in that process. We've been at this work for 8 or so months, and we have a couple more months to go. So I want to just give you some information on that. And then I want to talk about the two really main components of the plan document, the draft character and land use plan, and then some highlights of the recommendations that we've been putting together. Not going to go through them all. You'll, within 2 weeks or so, you're going to have the full plan document and you can go over them. But just want to give you a sense of the direction that we're heading in and give you a little bit of information about how we're going to be presenting that information, and then talk a little bit about next steps and how we hope to wrap up the work and finish strong through this process. So you all are probably now very familiar with what a comprehensive plan is all about. We're feeling really good about what we've been able to put together, which we think will be a strategic guide for you to help manage change. The township has, of course, experienced a lot of change in recent decades and a lot of development, and we have no reason not to think that's going to continue. So this plan is really all about saying, that there are ways that you can try to shape that change. There are a lot of great things that have been happening recently, a lot of special things about the community that people want to hold on to. I want to make sure that this plan helps to paint a picture about how that can be done, but then also how you can be open and welcoming to change that you do want to see. So this is a long-range vision. We're looking at a decade or so. It's covering a whole range of topics that you will see. We really worked hard to try to balance the perspectives of all the different folks we talked to. Started with a bunch of stakeholder interviews. We then moved forward and have done 2 rounds of public engagement, and we've had an amazing steering committee guiding us through the work. So ultimately what you'll see is a plan that's going to have some short, and by short I mean a couple of years out, not like tomorrow, short term and then medium range, looking at about 10 years or so actions. And this document can be a guide, but also it can be the foundation for regulatory change if you choose to make some zoning amendments, for example. This should give you a really good foundation to do that. So our public process, I mentioned, started in the summer, fall of last year. We're now in this third phase where we're trying to wrap up the work. We are just completing the second round of public engagement, and we're really moving into a moment now where we're putting the draft plan together and are drawing from the work that we've done in the subsequent phases. We are looking to wrap up the work by May. We'll be coming back to you then when you'll have the document. You will have seen a draft, been able to give any comments, and then you'll have the final plan document then, and hopefully be moving forward with adoption. Are you doing it?
Go ahead.
I mentioned our steering committee. Just wanted to acknowledge and thank them. Max and Randy did an amazing job putting a group together that has all different knowledge and background and experience in the community. So that's been extremely helpful to us. They've met, 6 or 7 times, I think, through the process and helped us quite a bit. We've done a lot of outreach and publicity. Word of mouth has been key, as is often the case with these kind of plans, using existing networks and organizations, but we also did a bunch of social media and email and all of that. We had some door-to-door canvassing we did for the first round of engagement. Some nursing students from Wright Pat actually went and knocked on people's doors and got some input. And we've had a presence at different community events in the second round of engagement, bringing the materials out, the full set of recommendations so people can take a look at them and know what's happening. This is just an image from our first round of engagement. One of the things we did were workshops where people could come together and talk face to face. Got some input on specific assets and opportunities that people saw on a map. This was also mimicked online, so you didn't have to be there that evening to contribute. People could actually do the map online, and we had hard copies available for folks as well. Second round of engagement was really about putting the draft recommendations out there, asking people what their priorities are, asking for comments, having them take a look at the future character and land use map and give comments. This information is all still available online. Not only did we do a workshop, but we've been moving the boards around. You might have seen them in some places around the community, and Max and Randy have been doing some presentations as well. So the character and land use plan, this is one of the core components of the work. It's really a map that describes how the township should use its land resources in the future. More specifically, what it does is it articulates ways of preserving the existing character, things that people said were important to them that they wanted to preserve, but also then look for opportunities for investment and new development. It forms the basis, for future policy and decision making. I mentioned, it can be a place for zoning to inform zoning changes. Also infrastructure decisions. The Greene County engineer has been a part of our process, and she was very complimentary at our last meeting about how helpful this can be for that kind of decision making as well. It's going to help as the Planning Commission considers new development proposals, right? They have an updated guide to what some of the things that they should be looking at, and also can just help to create a greater level of predictability among community members and potential developers and investors in the community. So our analysis has had a number of layers to it, starting of course with existing land use, making sure we're really clear about what's in the township currently. We then looked at a whole bunch of other things, one of the most important of which are environmental resources, making sure that we were really clear and had a solid understanding about where existing preserved land is, floodplain, wetlands, groundwater, all of that, to inform some of what we were looking at. Oops. We then moved forward and developed our character and land use plan. When you see this, you're going to recognize some things about it that are typical in a land use plan, in that it will recommend primary and secondary land uses in particular areas. But we think it actually will do a lot more for you moving forward. We also, for each of the character types that we've described, have a pretty robust description of the intent of the area and tried to get at about sort of the look and feel, what people are going to experience when they're in these places. A lot of times when you read kind of old-fashioned land use plans, you look at them and it says, okay, commercial one, and people don't really know what that means. We're trying to paint a more clear picture with some photos and other ways of really describing what the intent of these places should be. There are some new character types that are in here that I think are going to be really helpful to you, particularly when you look at this low impact commercial and low impact residential. these are places where we know that there's an interest and opportunity for significant development, whether it be commercial or residential, but where we can give a little bit more guidance in the plan about how to balance some of that with some of the sensitive environmental areas that you have. So these are character types that we think are able to just really help the township to think about how they can move forward with development, but maybe take some actions to mitigate some potential impacts. Of course, there are some areas where this is especially important. This is a little zoom in of Valley Springs Farm. This is an area where, of course, there's some portion that's going to be open space and conservation where development is restricted for a whole host of reasons. But then there's an area where that's within the floodplain, and then some other area where low impact commercial development is anticipated and the plan does call for it, but where there are some other actions that we recommend that would be taken to move forward with development in that area. So just to give you a sense of some of the highlights of how the recommendations portion of the plan is going to look. In addition to that map, the plan has a vision, it has goal statements, and then under that, objectives, and then these very specific actions, which are programs, policies, and projects. Our desire was to make sure that those were really implementable and concrete, so that it's not a mystery whether you've done them or not, and that staff and others who are implementing are able to really clearly tell how the extent to which they've made progress when they look back in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. This is our vision statement. We heard loud and clear from people about these themes about health and sustainability, but then also there's a whole range of other things that people wanted to see the community to achieve as I look out a decade or so, having to do with public services and quality housing and strong schools and access to employment opportunities. There are 6 goals in the plan. I won't go through and read them all, but again, they're addressing all these different topics that we talked about: community character and land use, policies, and sort of how to implement them, environmental resources, housing quality, facilities, services, and infrastructure, and this idea of shared prosperity and economic development. And then there are these overarching themes in the plan around sustainability, health and wellness, and intergovernmental coordination. We have, underneath all those goals, there are 69 specific recommendations or actions in the plan. These are what are online now that we're soliciting input on. And one of the activities that we're doing is this prioritization. When people came to our open house a couple of weeks ago, we allowed them to tell us what is most important to them. These are not like final priorities, but just to give you a sense of some of the things that have emerged. Again, preserving natural and agricultural areas, collaboration with different agencies, updating zoning resolution to try to integrate this idea of low impact development strategies, addressing floodplain, partnering with Greene County and others to minimize impact on natural resources, and meeting or exceeding minimum standards for fire, emergency, medical services, etc. So these are some of the things we heard from the community. Under each of these, there's a description that's even more specific about what we need. And there are some others that are not on this list that I think are going to rise to the top in terms of priorities based on what we've heard from the steering committee and staff. So a little bit about next steps. We have our online engagement that's going to be up for a few more days or so. I should say throughout this process, we've had, I think, about 300 people that have participated through a combination of different ways and have had really great substantive feedback. But we're going to leave that up a little bit longer, and then are moving into, we're already are working on drafting the plan document. There's some comments coming out of that engagement that we're making some tweaks that are causing us to make a few tweaks to the plan, but overall I have to say we've heard a lot of things sort of reinforcing what we have in there already, which is a really good sign at this stage in the process. So we're preparing that draft document that will be shared with you, as well as the Planning Commission and the Steering Committee. We're going to have a final Steering Committee meeting next month in April, when we're going to be talking about implementation and again, any final changes to the plan. Then we'll prepare the final plan document next month as well, and we will come back to you all in May. And that's when we will have a final plan document that we will be asking to have adopted at that time, so that staff and everyone else can move forward and start the next phase of hard work in actually implementing what's in the plan. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you have at this time. I will be back here in May. You will be receiving the draft document in the meantime, and I know that Max and Randy will make sure that any feedback or comments you have get back to us. We've been working, we've had a wonderful, I would say, we've had a wonderful experience working with them and working here in Beavercreek Township. It's just been really positive and really really rewarding for us, and feel good about where we are. Happy to hear anything you have to say now or take any comments later.
Thank you.
I've got a couple questions. On the steering committee, how many of those individuals live in Beavercreek Township?
Ooh, I don't know, but we did, when we selected the committee, we did do a matrix where we looked at that information, and I don't have it at my fingertips.
Okay,
But I can
I think
find that out.
I think it'd be important, and
Yeah.
I think you have some exceptional people on here. That's not an issue there. The question is, when I look through this list, it looks like 50% of these people don't live in Beavercreek Township. And so it's just an interesting point. The second thing, if I look at your map of existing land use versus future land use, there's, if you look, and I'm going to zoom in specifically on Hilltop Road,
Yep.
you have in your existing land use, it's colored in as agricultural. And it's a light green color along the hilltop coming from Treybine. And if I look at the draft future, it's shaded dark green for open space and conservation, yet the PUD that overlays that tract calls for R1 or R2 housing.
Okay.
So there's a discrepancy there.
Okay.
So I would just caution to put something on this that conflicts with a PUD that already exists.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Yeah.
So, because that would, all of a sudden you then have the general public saying, wait, you can't build what's already approved.
Okay.
And that creates a conflict. So something just to be aware of there.
That's great.
So, I attended one of these engagement sessions and they were good. I don't know. So when people showed up to those meetings, do we vet if they are residents of Beavercreek Township?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We have an exit questionnaire that both for the in-person and the online, so I do have that data.
Okay.
And the vast majority of participants do live in the township.
Okay.
I can give the specific percentage.
I think it'd be
Wow.
similar to the steering committee. It'd be good to know that
Yeah.
those were actual residents of the township. And that could include city and unincorporated, but it
Yeah.
should be a Beavercreek Township because that's what we're trying to roadmap forward. The one overarching, I'll call it tone of feedback, was generally, don't build any more houses, don't put more pressure on the schools, and stop housing developments, and which are all things that the township cannot do. And so just want to make sure that we don't get caught up in that and forget the reality.
Yeah. I
So,
think,
and that we have an obligation to be good stewards and to do it in a responsible and a planned and a managed approach. But the overarching comment, and it was, I teased a few people at the end of the meeting that I attended that pretty much you just don't want development. I understand that. You don't want more housing. You don't want your school taxes to go up. So,
I think the message, I really appreciate that comment. I think the message that this plan puts forth is that change and development have been happening for some time in this community, and they will continue. So what this plan is about is not stopping that change and not stopping development. It's about giving a little direction about, particularly in certain areas, if it's to move forward, what do we want the look and feel of it to be? How do we sort of
Right.
articulate that a little more clearly? So I think when you see the document, that will come through. But if you look at it and you feel like that message is not clear, please let us know, because that
Sure.
is the intention.
Ed Amrine, one of our former colleagues, he always said it best. He said it was interesting because there was a rural tract of land that was agricultural, and Ed was a very strong advocate that Beavercreek Township lacked, that the unincorporated portion lacked certain diversity of housing So we did not have a rental product in Beavercreek Township, and so he was actually advocating for that because it offered a different type of affordable housing. So just things like that to keep in mind that just to make sure that we're following. As far as, this plan being concrete or, and I agree with having something that is understandable, that folks can read and say, I get that. All the more important to make sure that it doesn't conflict with something that already exists as far as a permitted use or a permitted density or something like that. But it also we need to emphasize that these things are living documents and they change every 5 years. That the plan, it may be a 20-year vision, but it's a 5-year implementation. Every 5 years it should be looked at.
Yes,
So
yes, I think we have that.
that's my opinion.
Implicit, in the
Okay.
plan as well.
Otherwise, your excitement over a comprehensive plan is,
That's great.
That's what they do.
you're passionate about what you do and it shines through. So thank you for taking the time and the effort and the energy to pull this together. So,
Pleasure.
yeah.
Mr. Kress, if I could ask one other, or if I could mention one other thing, in the characters, how they're set up, you could have a neighborhood commercial, I think that was the pink area that you were talking about, that does have the residential aspect.
Right, and I was
Can
talking
we deal
about
with-
Hilltop Road. If you look at on the east side of Hilltop, it
Okay.
went from light green to dark green, and it's
Okay.
actually the PUD is R1, R2.
Sorry, I was taking a look at that.
No,
Okay,
you're fine.
Take a look at
will do.
that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sarah, appreciate it.
We'll see you soon.
All right. Next on the agenda is any citizens desiring to speak. If there's anyone desiring to speak, you get 3 minutes to tell us whatever you like. All right, I don't see anyone. Old business, there is none. New business, there is none. And I will turn it over to Mr. Grosjean. Thank you.
I don't think there's any agenda items for the sheriff's department. He's not here, nor human resources. I don't think I saw her log on. So I think the next item is community development and risk. And we have one resolution in front of you. It is for the appointment of 2 alternates to the Board of Zoning Appeals and 1 member to the Zoning Commission. And if you don't mind reading the resolution.
I'll move to approve resolution number 202-30327-CDR-A. Do you want this as presented, Mr. Grosjean? Is that fine?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
It's a resolution to appoint Joseph Jenkins and Jeff Roberts as alternate members of the Board of Zoning Appeals and to appoint Richard Porter as a full member of the Zoning Commission as presented.
Second.
Trustee Crutz.
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
I think that you have the resolution. Okay, thank you, board. The next item on the agenda is information technology. We have some EOC upgrades, and we have Paragon here to provide a presentation for that.
Board. Board. The EOC has a pretty in-depth AV system to be used both as a computer classroom as well as in the event of an emergency. Provides multiple workstations for various services. So this is just a routine upgrade of some equipment that we found to be outdated, as well as an expansion of some of the functionality. Once the system is completed, we'll be able to take any of 12 video inputs in the room and output them to any of 8 displays, as well as there's an overhead projector that will actually be able to display multiple sources at once. So for in the event of when the room is in use for a disaster, we would be able to show multiple pieces of information. So someone who's acting in command can have a good, can be able to monitor the situation without having to walk up to each computer to view that information. There are 2 different companies at play, Amplify AV, who actually did the community room that we're in now, as well as Paragon. Amplify AV will be supplying all of the hardware and the labor for the system. Paragon will be handling the network configuration as well as a little bit of project management and then some training for township employees once the system is complete. I'll let Jason speak if he has anything to add.
I'm just here to answer any questions that you might have.
Sure. I'll have a couple questions.
I figured.
This may go actually more to Chief or more to Mr. Grogan. So as far as the utilization of this equipment, how often is this utilized, and is it utilized for other purposes in the same room? Or is it strictly reserved for emergency situations?
This is used on an almost daily basis. So it is used on a regular basis for meetings and trainings. It is the overflow room for when this room is already booked. So this is usually the primary.
But this technology specifically will be used on a daily
The
basis?
technology is used on a regular basis, similar to how it's used in this room for instruction, for videos, for the training demonstrations that we have, that we build on the simulators. All of those things will be projected there.
Okay.
It is also built kind of a divergence from this room. The entire we'll have a microphone array that will be able to pick up the entire room, so it may be a better space for conference calls where everybody can be heard clearly regardless of where they are in the room, and it will offer some, a little bit of a better place to record like live classroom instruction in the event that the fire department is doing a training and they need to record it for employees that couldn't attend.
Okay. In the event of some sort of natural disaster, another tornado or whatever should come through, so how is this isolated to protect it? I mean, are you setting up separate surge protection for this? Are you setting up some battery backup for this equipment? What are you setting up?
Yeah, there will be the whole system. It is its own network rack. It has its own UPS. That room as a whole has some additional power. There's an additional breaker panel over there that has a lot of extra surge protection. It is attached to the generator. And it'll all be closed circuit, for lack of a better term, where everything will be terminated to the closet in that room and accessible directly there without having to go around the township. And from the network configuration side, in the event of a total equipment failure in the main server room here, in reconfiguring the network, we'll actually be able to, in the event of a total equipment failure, bring in a portable router, and it offers us some expanded connectivity where we can restore functionality to that room way quicker to allow it to continue to function while we restore the rest of the fire station connectivity and the rest of the township facilities.
Okay. And you ran a analysis of buy versus lease or not, as far as the equipment?
We did not. We have a lot of this equipment we don't see leased. I don't even know if some of it is offered in leasing, as it's very specialized
Okay.
and configured, and they're usually not sold as whole systems that are leased.
Yeah, there's a lot of configuration that has to be done to make all of these things talk to each other. So while there may not necessarily be specialized devices themselves, but they are configured uniquely for that application.
Okay. That's all I had. Good. Okay, thank you. I'll make a motion to approve purchase request 23-admin-0015 to Amplify AV for equipment and installation of technology equipment in an amount not to exceed $68,684.91, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve purchase request 23-admin-0016 to Paragon IT for equipment and installation of technology equipment in the amount not to exceed $2,600, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Board. Thank you, Paragon. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Chief. They won't leave you out.
He has more to come. Next item on the agenda is Finance Department, and they do not have any agenda items. Nothing, Terry? Public Service, I think Mr. Schroeder's on, but they do not have any agenda items either. So the next on the agenda is Fire. Chief?
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. Tonight we have before you an update to the Public Safety Information Sharing Network, PSISN, interagency agreement. This is the governing document for the countywide initiative that is the PSISN. It is a cooperative agreement between all of the major political jurisdictions in the county, including the Board of County Commissioners, the Greene County Sheriff, and all the villages, townships, and cities in Greene County to provide computer-aided dispatch services through the 3 dispatch centers, which would be Greene Central, Fairborn Dispatch, and Beavercreek Police Dispatch, and the related services to make sure that all of the other parts work together. So, for example, taking incoming 911 calls, implementing Pro QA for quality control and insurance, parking tickets and crash reconstruction software, fire and EMS reporting in addition to case reporting. They do connect to the courts, I believe, at this point. So that PSISN system has been in effect since about 2008, 2007, I believe is when the first interagency agreement was signed. We've been operational since 2008. This is kind of the 3rd generation from my perspective of it, as far as we're facing a Tyler upgrade. So Tyler Technology is the company that provides the software that is CAD. That upgrade includes some additional price increases. The price has been incredibly flat over the years. I didn't have an opportunity to look at what our overall year-to-year has been, but there's been relatively minor increases since we began. This represents the first significant change in or increase in cost, and it also brings some additional players to bear in that previously the eastern townships in particular were subsidized by Greene County. They are now all stepping up, and they're going to be paying a share of the cost of the system as well. So there is one typo in the packet. I apologize. I believe my total line has an extra $sign and it's missing a 5. So if I remember correctly, it should be $31,500 would be our annual cost for the first essentially 5 years of the agreement. There are potential price increases in year 2 and 4. I'm not sure, I don't recall if there's a cap on that, so that's an issue. I'll have to get an answer back for you.
Is it 2.5% increase in years 2 and 4? They're subject to.
Oh, it is, that is the cap.
That's what you had on section 2.2 IAA, section 5.
Okay, so I copied it out there, so if it's
Okay.
in there, that should be accurate.
Okay.
And then the additional membership will include the additional voices in the board and the direction of the committee as well. So
What percentage of the total do we pay?
I want to say it's 10%.
Do we have 10% of the seats at the table?
No,
Is Xenia still in it, or are they out of it?
they are in it.
They are
So
back in it.
That's what I was about to extrapolate on. Xenia is in a unique position that, well, we could go into a long history of how they got there, but they're in a unique position currently in that one of their employees is the primary technical support for the system. That position is paid for jointly from all the dispatch centers, and so us paying to Beavercreek Dispatch is paying indirectly into that position as well. They have decided, and this is a rough quote, that Xenia is no longer going to carry the water for supporting the infrastructure and IT support for PSISN, and so they are going to be withdrawing that sometime between July and 6 months from last Thursday. That's when we're notified. So all of the costs that you have before you are for the system itself, but not for the IT support to manage the system long term. That is going to be an additional cost that, quite frankly, we literally found out last Thursday was going to be an issue, and we have no concrete numbers on what it would be. What the board, the PSISN board, which is made up predominantly of police and fire chiefs, so it's kind of above our pay grade. Our recommendation was that they go to the administrators and managers to work out exactly what that looks like. We'll provide technical support and input as needed, but that's going to have to be something that's negotiated amongst all the players and how they're going to provide that service. It is a necessary service. The system will not operate well for very long without it. But once that individual from Xenia Police Department is withdrawn from providing it, we don't know what the replacement looks like.
In my opinion, we should have 10% of the seats at the table if we're paying 10% of the bill.
I disagree. The challenge that we've run into is, and I have fought this fight with PSISN for years and years, so I'm probably a bit beat down and worn out from it. We do not have a dispatch center, so we are dependent upon somebody to provide dispatch services for us. Right now, that somebody is Beavercreek City, and we have no desire to look for an additional dispatch partner at this point. But because we're tied to Beavercreek City Dispatch, we're tied to PSISN because we can't leave it without leaving Beavercreek City. We could potentially leave PSISN, but then that 10% is going to get pushed to Beavercreek City, who is then essentially going to bill us that 10% in our services contract with them. So this would be the time probably to have that conversation, especially moving forward with the IT support. But in the past, when we've had it, we've been unsuccessful in gaining any additional leverage for percentage of what we pay versus percentage of seat at the table. As a matter of fact, so let me put out my initial caveat, which is PSISN is generally a good thing for us, and it generally provides what we need. But from the day we were sold it, 2006, 2007, when at that point Deputy Spicer came in to make his initial pitch, it has never delivered what we were told it would deliver. Beavercreek Township, at my recommendation for long periods of time, refused to pay bills because they were not delivering what was agreed upon in the original interagency agreement. We finally got to a point where push came to shove, and we essentially wrote off some of those initial deliverables that we were never going to get them, and we've been paying the amount that we agreed regardless. So again, I don't disagree with your premise. It's beyond my ability to affect a change. So if we want to, it would probably be an elected official level discussion that would have to happen to make any consequential changes. It's beyond my ability.
Well, they're always more difficult to have those discussions after you've paid the bill than
Yes.
before you pay it.
Well,
And so
like I
if
said,
the need is there, then obviously you want to do what's right. But honestly, you'd go collectively with the city of Beavercreek and say, we need a larger voice, period. So, I mean, what does, how emergent is this motion this evening? In lieu of taking a little bit of time to have a
Tonight versus 2 weeks,
Right.
it is probably not critical. But the likelihood of affecting change before it is emergent because of having to have the money to pay Tyler for the services, that's gonna be more critical. Because if we go back with,
But it seems like the biggest gripe people have had with this, two gripes are, one big one though is the maintenance costs, and not being able to contain that essentially, or being force-fed it is maybe a better way to say it.
yeah, and that's pretty much the situation we've been in the past. The other thing I'll throw out there is the percentage. The percentage could be parsed a number of different ways. Seats at the table is one, call volume is another, hours that staff works on the system would be another. So there's a number of different ways that you could go back and evaluate. I only have numbers for calls for service, but just doing that as a comparison, we could have a conversation about we would pay the percentage of that versus, say 10% versus number of seats at the table. But that would then rearrange the calculus for all the players, and as a minor, I'll say a minor partner in it, our ability to affect change is gonna be limited. So,
But they
I'm
have,
happy
they
with
have
that.
they have a formula now that they're
Yes.
had it, unless they just arbitrarily pick 10%. There's somewhere along the line that
Yeah, I
10%.
think the county picks up 40, and then it's 20 for Fairborn, 20 for Xenia, and then 10 for Beavercreek City, 10 for Beavercreek Township, if I remember correctly. So I'm happy to go back and have the conversation. It's a fight that we've had in the past. I just don't know.
Between the city of Beavercreek and Beavercreek Township, do we have 20% of the seats at the table?
No, I don't believe so.
That just doesn't make sense. So that's why that's my logic was to go collectively. So
And I'm happy to have that conversation and go back. Again, the critical thing is we'll have to have a conversation, and it's probably something that I'm sure there's an executive session for contractual negotiations we can
Sure.
talk about in
Okay.
more detail.
that would be my recommendation, unless you feel strongly the other way. At least have the discussion. So.
Yeah. And I agree, you know, before we pass this and before we pay that is the time to make that happen.
I absolutely agree, and if that's the direction, I'm all for it.
Okay.
This has always been a bitter pill for me. Matter of fact, like I said, I've been fighting this fight for a long time, so if we want to go back and revisit it,
Right.
I'm all for that. I'm happy to start the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's just important at least to make the effort. So to have a pro rata, we're either overpaying or underpaying, but one way or another, we should have equitable say.
Okay.
So,
Can I request some way to have a conversation between Mr. Zaharian, Mr. Rushing, myself, and at least one representative of the board, so we have some parameters on?
please do.
Okay. I'll make that request.
Happy to help if I can.
And it was pointed out that I skipped over item number 1, so I apologize, because it's been a while since I've gotten a notification, but I am actually very proud to recognize firefighter Sean Fowler. He did an exceptional job teaching CPR to Coy Middle School students. Got a lot of rave reviews, not only from his captain who did the recognition, but from school administrators, including the superintendent who was present for it. He worked with children, not only just the general population, but kids with special needs, so that they could understand that they were capable of doing it as well. And I included in here a little bit of a note that strikes home for some of us that were on the call. Back in '93, there was a near drowning on North Fairfield, in which a 2-year-old fell into a pool. We're not sure exactly how that happened, or at least I never heard. His 11-year-old sister, who had been shown CPR at her elementary or middle school just a few days prior, pulled him out and initiated CPR, and he made a full recovery. We gave her this kind of recognition for it, but it's amazing what kids that age can accomplish if they're just shown the skills, and so he was able to pass that on, and hopefully they'll never need to do it, but if they do, they've been shown and have the opportunity to. So
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
No other money you're asking for?
I'm sorry.
No other money you're asking for?
No, not tonight.
Be back.
I see the writing on the wall tonight.
Thank you, board.
All right. All right. Legal advisor, Ms. Frick?
Just to kind of piggyback on that discussion is, when you all sort of get a timetable of when you want to address this, let me know, because the prosecutor's office regularly emails me asking me what the status of this is. So I can,
I'll be speaking with Mr. Zaharia for tomorrow.
okay.
Not me.
And then I can let them know it'll be a little bit yet. So,
Okay.
that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Rushing?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Meetings, MVRPC, Ms. Wallace is not here.
That meeting was canceled, I believe.
Okay, that works. Tech?
I think the meeting is next month.
Yeah, that meeting was canceled.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure is.
I was coming. I was working.
I thought the end was near. I heard a voice from above. And it was, wow, he's here.
I think the TAC meeting will be next month also.
Thank you.
Okay.
Regional planning.
The full commission meets tomorrow evening. There is no specific Beavercreek Township item on the agenda. The RPCC bylaws and responsibilities will be reviewed before the full commission. There's a guest speaker from MVRPC about EPA climate pollution planning grants, and that's about it.
All right, thank you. District Advisory Council met, new officers were elected, and the next health department meeting is on the 6th, so I'll have more information after that. School superintendent, city manager.
Mr. Zariev did not give me any updates on that one, nor the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Restoration Committee.
Okay, thank you. Township Association, Ms. Wallace is not here, and investment oversight.
I had nothing to report unless you had something.
Now, the only thing I would add is Tex Sumner will be here, giving
Good.
pre-scheduled speaker on April 24th.
April 21st, perfect.
All right, if there's anything else to come before the board?
No, ma'am?
No, well, I'll take a motion to
Nothing
adjourn.
from finance.
Thank you, Board.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.